was actually sort of invented when Twitter only had 140 characters, hashtags. They started trying to shrink stuff to save space. So yeah, if you look at Ady Stokes on LinkedIn or Ady on Twitter, well, I don't do too much Twitter now, I'm not sure anybody does. It's a bit of a dodgy side, you know. So, brief introduction of me and why I talk about accessibility first. So 2015, early 2015, I was working with legacy systems for third-party mortgage administration, mortgage and loan administration, highly regulated, everything had to be documented and stuff like that. I'm sure a few of you worked in that environment. You can't, you know, even an exploratory session has to be documented top to bottom. So they wanted to build a customer-facing white label site. So, for example, in the Building Societies division, there are 37 different building societies they administered mortgage for. So, a team would get a phone call, and they would know by how the interaction went when they made the call, which building society they were talking to. So, say, hi, I'm Leeds and Holbrook, or hi, I'm Skipton Building Society, or whatever it would be. So they wanted to provide all the customers with a view of the mortgages, you know, be able to sign in, make payments, and all that sort of good stuff. It was the very first digital project in the company, and I got put on it was almost done as like a little mini startup. There was a little team of 6 of us, and it was like, do you think you can make a site? Well, no, give it a go. So one of the requirements was it had to be compliant to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, you'll see it abbreviated as. At the time, it was 2.0. We're on 2.1 now. 2.2 has been promised for 3 years. So I'm not going to go into the whole history of WCAG, but it's usually a decade between updates. They're trying to improve that, and then COVID hit, and it all went a bit wiggle and wobbly, but that's going to change. So I was tasked with looking into how accessibility would affect our project, the things we needed to think about, and it was really good because we were talking about it before we'd written a line of code, before all the right requirements were done. And I read a lot about inclusive design, universal design principles. The Microsoft Inclusive Design Toolkit is a really good resource. Talks about permanent, temporary and situational disabilities. So as an example, if you can't hear, you have a permanent hearing disability. Temporary, you can have an ear infection that affects your hearing, that's going to clear up at some point, so that's a temporary one. Situational, trying to order a drink at a bar in a really busy pub. And the barman's going, what do you want? And pointing and making gestures and doing hands. So those are the sort of 3 classifications of the Microsoft Inclusive Design Kit. So when I started investigating accessibility, understanding it, trying to work out what it meant to us, I was amazed how much was common sense that I've just never thought about before. Just like, yeah, well, that's obvious. But you've got to start thinking about it for it to become obvious. It's like you go to lots of testing disciplines and learn a little bit about it, and all the low-level beginner stuff, it's like, oh, yeah, when you know it, it's really obvious. It's like, oh, you've got a 2-factor authentication, you've got 2 pages of a website. All right, so let's just go straight to the second page and see if I can get in there without doing the first part, or SQL injection, whatever it is. Now, accessibility, I've spoke to loads of people over the last 8 years or so, and they're a little bit scared of it because they don't want to get accessibility wrong. So I turned a phrase 5 years ago: accessibility is not an exact science. So it's no need to be scary about it. The reason why I said that is, if you do something and you try to improve the accessibility of it, you may have an improvement for one group of people, but the consequence of that is you may make it worse for a different group. So this is why it's not an exact science. We follow the WCAG guidelines and try and do the best with those, but there are also 1,000 things around that which are also fall into the accessibility field. So don't be scared of doing accessibility testing or thinking about accessibility or trying to learn it. My sort of mission, because when I started learning it, I started looking for resources, ministry testing online and stuff like that. There's quite a lot of really high level, oh yeah, accessibility, you need to do this, these are the things you need to think about, but they don't go into the detail of, well, you need to do this test for this reason because it'll help this group of people. So I tried to put information together, and as Brian said, I'm involved quite a lot with the Ministry of Testing. If anybody's going, I'll be volunteering at Liverpool this year at the test match. I usually do 99-second talks. It's quite often poetry and occasional singing, as Brian alluded. This is my website. If you scroll down on the main page, there's a list of sort of different things. You'll find accessibility, poetry. The periodic table of testing, I started making over a decade ago. 20 years ago near enough, because in November this year is my 20th anniversary of working in software testing. So I was trying to understand it. I started making lists about all the different things. I tried a mind map, that just got messy and out of the way. So I ended up with a periodic table of testing because I'd done a periodic table of data when I used to work in data warehousing, and it seemed to fit, and people seem to get a lot out of it. You can use it as for shading in the things you've been learning about. There's all sorts of different stuff. So that's why I got into accessibility, because I just found it fascinating, and I didn't think there were enough people talking about it. So if one person in this room goes away wanting to learn more about accessibility and becomes an accessibility advocate, like lots of people call me an accessibility expert, I'm definitely not. I know there's a lot more I don't know, right? I know a bit, but I call myself an advocate. So as Brian said, I like to be generous with my time. If anybody in this room is thinking about accessibility, has a question, there'll be time afterwards, but you can hit me up on LinkedIn, send me a message and go, oh, we've got this type of system, we're talking about accessibility, we want to know what the first steps are or whatever. I'll answer you. I might set up a call with you. I was speaking to Conor McGregor at Poplio in Ireland 2 days ago. We had a half-hour session and introduction into accessibility, the things you should think about, how to sell it to management and all that sort of stuff. So I covered quite a range. So anybody's got any questions about accessibility, just hit me up. So this session is based on an article I wrote for the Ministry of Testing called Simple Accessibility Tests Every Tester Should Know. Now when I say simple, is 2 tabs a simple test? Tabbing twice and that tests something? Because that's where this live demo is going to start. And it's about skip to links. So has anybody got any questions before I start? Ady's rules of me presenting is, if you don't understand something or you're lost, just shout out, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll try and get you caught back up. I don't like leaving people behind. I've taught a lot for the Coders Guild, teaching people testing boot camps and stuff like that. I use the same rules there. I don't like people left behind. I've taught testing apprentices as well based on my course concepts. So it doesn't matter what the question is. There's no, like that old saying, there's no stupid questions. I don't really like that. There's questions for understanding. If I'm saying something and you don't understand it, just shout out and I'll do my best to get you caught up. Is that all right with everybody? Okay. So in the Ministry of Testing thing, you'll see something that looks like that, and that's my little journey that I'm going to go through tonight. We've got 4 websites apart from mine. We've got the BBC News, Illinois College, and 2 British computer science sites. Now one thing I like to do with my accessibility talks is look at the accessibility of the place where I'm going. So we'll see how the British Computer Society is doing on accessibility. Spoiler, there's a big thing that's wrong. Okay, so as I said, one of the simplest tests you can do is what's called a skip to link. Now what a skip to link is I'll just get rid of that. What a skip to link is you can see on this, there's a big menu across the top. Now that big menu has 12 things plus all this extra. So if I want to get to the main content on this page and I start tabbing, you can see it's got the BBC sign. There's a skip to content appeared. Everybody see that? Now what that's doing is, if I carry on just tabbing, just using my tab key, I'll go through all this top level menu. I'll go down there, I'll go through all this menu. And then I'll go through this sub-menu. And I finally reach the main content of the page. Now, if I start at the top again and tab back to my skip to link, if I hit return, you can see that the page is scrolled, so it's showing me the main content, and if I tab again, we're on the first article. So I can select it and I can go in. Now, as usual, focus has gone back to the top of the page. So a couple of tabs, I'm back to the content. Instead of having to go through all this again, I can hit return, and you can see that it's highlighted where I'm on the page. So skip to links, the worst example of skip to links was an Australian retail site. If you were a keyboard user, you can't use a mouse or you've got no other way of interacting with it, just the keyboard. If you're a keyboard user, when you bought something from this site, it went in a basket and it said a little pop that said it's in your basket, and then it took focus back to the top of the page. It took you 170 plus tabs to get to the basket. They got sued, it cost them some money. Yes?
Stupid question. How do you get the skip to content to appear?
Right, so skip to content generally, and not always, because there are quite a few sites, and there's a bit of an argument in the accessibility world whether you should always see it or you should always not see it. I don't really care, to be honest, which one it is, as long as it exists. So with this one, until you tab to it, it doesn't appear, because it's just part of the accessibility journey. Now, in terms of best practice, or a better practice, I can't remember, just let me open this up. I think, when they actually had employees, I think it was Twitter, the Twitter accessibility team, worked with the Illinois College of Applied Health Science to try to develop a better version of the skip to link. So you can see on this page it's actually visible. I'll just move my mouse over it, it's highlighted up there. So if I do start from the top of the page and tab down, you can see it's highlighted, it's got a little red line to it. And if I press enter, there's actually a skip menu. So I can go to main, I can go directly to the search, I can navigate to the footer, and I can go to all the main bits on this page. Now what that also means is, you've got a snapshot of the content on the page. Now people with screen readers, who are native screen reader users, I test with screen readers, I'm not a native user. I can test about 1.5 times. If I'm in a rush, I prefer not to, I prefer to listen to it at normal speed. But people who are native screen reader users, it's like a different language. They can listen to words about 500-600 words a minute. And that's just noise to me, but if you're doing it day in, day out, you become attuned to it and you understand what's being said. Screen reader testing is really interesting because all elements of the page you describe, you tab into a field, it'll tell you whether it's empty, whether it's got content in it, whether it's an input field, all this sort of stuff, and what state it's in. So I'd highly recommend at least once just having a play with the screen reader to see what sort of different journey it is. I'd speak to designers quite a lot because we created a great user journey. And I went, all right, what user? Well, you're the user. All right, there's only one. Is he called Bob, lives in Huddersfield? I don't know. But what about Alan, who lives in Bradford, can't use a mouse? What's his user journey like? Is it exactly the same? No, it isn't, because he's using a keyboard, he's not using a mouse. So there's lots of different reasons why people use screen readers, and it's not just because they can't see. People for whom English isn't the first language quite often use screen readers to read content out because, I don't know if we've got any linguists in here who can't speak multiple languages. It's a lot quicker to learn to speak a language than it is to learn the written language. There's a disparity, it takes longer to, so if you can actually see the language and hear it being spoken about, you can follow along, you can pick up things better. Different neurodiverse people, like people with dyslexia and things like that, they often use screen readers because if they're having a bad day or they're really struggling to work, or if content is justified on a page, there's a phenomenon called rivers of light, and basically what it means is when it's justified, the kerning between the words is stretched, so they become different sizes, and people with autism, dyslexia, and a few others, they lose focus on the words, they can only see the white lines because they're different sizes as they go down the page, so it becomes like a river of white. I have experienced a very mild version of this myself when I was in school, and it seems particularly harsh when it's a fully white background. 5% grey is great for giving content because it just takes that slight glare away, but you just have to consider the contrast on top of that contrast with it. So this is like I say, the Illinois College of Applied Health Science. That's a really good menu. I worked at a company called Lean for about 20 months, and theirs is a system that records college lectures, and you can import the slides on a PDF. You can link up the audio to the slide so you know when the slide changes on the thing. You can add your own notes, you can browse Wikipedia from within it. I pointed out that because we're adding all these different widgets to each note for all the different things you could do, like literally moving from one note to another note, there was something like 12 tabs. So we introduced just a skip note. So the person knew, oh yeah, I know I'm about halfway down the page, so we skip note, and jump down. We introduced a jump to the bottom of the notes in case it was near the end. And we added quite a lot of interactive stuff. We have people in the States who are native keyboard users and use screen readers as well. I spent time talking to them about their experience, how they felt with the changes we've made, any recommendations you can do. And as much as I'll encourage everybody in the room to do some accessibility testing, it's nothing like getting a native screen reader, keyboard user, and someone who actually has a disability to look at your software and give you feedback on it. So I can only do so much, but I can't talk for people with disabilities. I can just talk about some of the barriers that we have. That's again why I don't call myself an expert. Does that make sense?
Which browser are you using?
For this, for this I'm using Chrome, and I'll use an extension called Wave in a bit. That's available on Chrome and Firefox. I don't think it's available in Edge or whatever the other one is. But yeah, all this is done in Chrome. So I'll just go back to here. Go. Should roll my mouse. So I mentioned earlier about keyboard navigation. So tabbing through, understanding how to go forwards and backwards and stuff. Use the keyboard and then use the mobile phone in screen reader mode. The whole pad basically becomes your keyboard. So you can use 1, 2, 3, 4 finger gestures. You can swipe right. You're not dating anybody. You're tabbing. You can swipe left and you tab backwards, just like tab and alt tab and stuff like that. So it's interesting to do. I'd encourage you to have a go with whatever phone you've got to turn on whatever screen reader software there is. Word of warning, don't do what I did the first time I did it. I was on a train journey and I was bored and I thought, oh, I'll play on my phone with the screen reader. I didn't work out what the shortcut was to turn it on and off. So I went through my settings, I turned it on, could I probably turn it off? I had people on the train giving me very strange looks as I was getting more and more frustrated. So what was like a 5-minute play on my phone turned into about a 45-minute stress fest. So learn what the shortcuts are. For an iPhone, it's hit the home key 3 times and a little pop-up menu that includes voiceover appears. And then when you finished, hit it 3 times, and then but you have to double tap it to turn it off because basically you're in keyboard mode or trackpad mode. So keyboard navigation, I always talk about visible focus at the same time because they go hand in hand. So I showed you earlier, as I was going through this, you can see that it's underlined and it's got a box around it. So there's like almost like a double indicator there that's where my keyboard focus is. So if I want to navigate through, I know I need to go backwards or forwards. You can see that the little border underneath has become white because it's the opposite contrast. And as we go through, keyboard focus is really important for native keyboard users. They used to call them power users, people who very rarely use a mouse and use the keyboard to do everything. I think we used to call them power users. I think that's sort of fallen out of favour now. But I touch type. I got taught to touch type when I worked for a logistics company, and I used to like type delivery notes and stuff like that. They sent me to college to learn to touch type on a real typewriter. I am quite old. This was early 90s. I think it was about 92, 93. Because I went to college and had a big typewriter, and the keyboard was like, it was about this tall, and the keyboard was like this. So I touch type, so I touch type everything. I use the keyboard, tabs, all the different stuff. But anybody who can't use a mouse or something like that needs visible focus. I've seen varied results with this. You can't quite often get, when people are not used to doing this and they start adding it, you quite often don't get a little rectangle, you get a little step either end, and because pixels are out and stuff like that. You can real fun inspecting the code and working out which bit's wrong. But yeah, it doesn't really matter where you are on the page. It should highlight, it should have something around it, and I'll talk about it again when we get to it. It should maintain a reasonable level of contrast. Do those make sense? Yes, any questions? Cool. Right, so I'm going to talk about alternative text now, so that's a little video, but most BBC articles have little pictures. This malarkey that's going on here is the reason why I couldn't get a cab from the train, and I had to walk about 10 minutes to get to a quiet enough street where I could call a cab and get picked up to get to my hotel, which is just over there. But it was nice seeing all the dressed up people in the kilts and the traditional wear and stuff. They were very, very smart people. I've only been to Edinburgh once before, and I got a bit turned around coming out of the station, so I ended up right next to the Balmoral. So I'm guessing I literally came out at the worst possible place at the worst possible time. I was trying to pull my little bag and getting battered about and all sorts. But yeah, so thanks, Charlie. Funny thing happened to me on the way to this talk. I was in the reception of the Premier Inn, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, somebody threw eggs at Charles down south.
In York.
Got arrested.
In York.
In York. Got arrested. Pictures of him with his hands up his back. He walked past the Premier Inn when I was in reception holding his still not my king size. And I'm going, why do I know him? And there was like frost in the window like this. And then there was a window without frost, and when the window without frost was there, I could see the not my king sign. I'm going, it's the dude, it's the bloke, it's the egg thrower. Anyway, going off the tangent here. So alternative text is a myth about images and alternative text. Can anybody tell me what you should do about alternative text for images on a web page?
Well, you suggested to put a description of what the picture relates to, but it depends upon your viewpoint of what you put in the alternative text.
So
you could say planes, not my king, and castle. What may be an accurate description depending upon your viewpoint.
yeah, billionaire has party at public expense. Yeah, you can do something like that.
Country owner has rave. Yes.
So that's the myth: is that all pictures on websites need alternative text. They don't. I look at it like you need to work out the reason for having alternative text, and that's where automatic accessibility checkers, they'll flag there's no alt text, but that can be a good thing. There was somebody on the Ministry of Testing having an absolute flap. They had a website with 3,000 products, and they were trying to automatically check that every picture had alternative text. It was keeping them up at night. They were very stressed. So I reached out to them. I said, can we have a quick chat? And he said, yeah, of course we have. So we had a conversation. And it went a little bit like, what products are there? And he went, Barry's. I went, right, okay. What are you trying to do with the alternative text? Making sure I've got something. Right. Does each product have a title and a description about what it is, the ampage, you know, what configuration it is? Does it have the A, double A, triple A, whatever the square one is? I don't know why we have square ones, that makes no sense. Anyway, off on a tangent again. So I said, so basically, the person who might be using a screen reader don't really give a shit whether it's gold and black. Doesn't care what it looks like because they'll know what battery code size they need. So I would say you need to do the opposite. You need to check that none of them have alternative text because they're essentially decorative images. Now I can see that. Does this? No, it was bad enough seeing the front back. Do these add anything to the description of the article? No, they're just decorative. The bits of fluff, right? So I would argue that you don't really need alternative text for these. Now there's multiple ways you can have no alternative text. In your code it says alt text and then it has 2 quotation marks and then you put your description in the middle of it. So just don't, just leave it blank. A screen reader will see that and just pass it by and carry on. There's an ARIA label that you can tag it as a descriptive decorative image. So you can just put that on it and the screen reader will do exactly the same, it will pass it by. The amount of websites I've gone on and I've come to a picture and it's described as 100.426.jpg. Honestly, I had a website, it had 150 images on, every one was a file number. I literally had to use my mouse to go past images because it was giving me a headache. Because these strings of numbers, there was about 20 numbers in this string. The camera must have added it, I don't know, it must have been some sort of convention. So, alt text, you need a reason to add it. I'll argue with anybody at any time, point them my way, say no, we have to have it. Now there are reasons why you would want alternative text. So if you're on a science site and you've got a graph, you might want to describe the graph. But have you got a table of figures that the graph was generated from? Well then you've already got your information. Are you trying to show trends? Well just make sure you describe, you know, this shows a trend of it's going up, it's going down, it's got a hump in the middle, I don't know. You know, energy prices, oh my god, that's going down. Not as much, we're paying twice as much, but that's good apparently. You just keep being cheap. So again, I'd argue you need a reason for it. I've only had once or twice people tell me a really good reason. And one of those is, if it's on social media, you should have alt text. And I agree with that. Any pictures I put on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else, I try to add alternative text. I do it in my presentations. Whenever I have a slide deck, all my images have alternative text. So the screen, if I export it as PDF, it has the proper heading levels, it has alternative text, it has all this, that sort of stuff, good stuff. So, alternative text. Everybody happy with that? We're all waffling a bit, so I'm just keeping one eye on time. Really like 8 going, it's still going.
Would that be the same as mouse over text?
Say again, sorry.
Would that be the same as mouse over text?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of comparisons there. It's very much a situation by situation basis, but rather having a default of it has to have it. Like I said, I'd argue the default is it doesn't have to add it unless it's a really valuable reason. So most social media sites you can describe images, GIFs and stuff like that. If I use them, I always put it in. LinkedIn's weird. If you add images in comments, it doesn't give you the alt text, so you need to describe it separately. Top tip, if you are ever adding alternative text to an image, don't start with picture of or image of, because the screen reader will tell the person who's hearing it, it's an image. So you quite often get image of. So, you know, how many times do you need to know it's an image? So just describe what's there. The next one I'm going to do is contrast. Now, up here on the top right hand side, you see where the life is. That's the extension called WAVE. That's Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. Yes, I know that doesn't spell WAVE. It's not me, it's WebAIM. Don't let me. WebAIM is Web Accessibility in Mind. That is the IM. So we'll let them off, they do some things right. But this is free. They also make NVDA, which is a free Windows screen reader. It was made because JAWS had 90% of the world's market for screen readers, and it cost an absolute fortune. It still costs quite a lot, but because there's free ones out there, and Apple's screen reading voiceover is really good. I'm a big fan of Apple screen reader and accessibility. generally speaking, when they have a big release, there's usually a section on accessibility improvements in it. So that's good. Now what Wave does is it gives you different areas. So you've got errors, contrasts, alerts, features, structural elements, and ARIA. If I scroll up and down the page, you will see these little boxes that's appeared. And if you click on it, it'll, I did it on a link. Sorry. No, I don't understand it. So you can see these little boxes. Again, live demos aren't a clue. Right, show me some of the link. There you are, roll this. So if you click on that, it will tell you what the thing is, and you'll see at the bottom you've got a link for code and a link for reference. Now if you click the code will appear at the bottom, and it'll take you right to the bit that it's on, so you can see why it's there, the reason behind it. You can do that with alt text as well. If you right click inspect on an image, or you use Wave, you can pop the code up. So I'll get rid of that. But the other cool thing it does is give you this reference. So if I click that on the left hand side here, it always tells you what it is, what it means, why it's important, and how to fix it if there's something wrong. And that does that for everyone. So if I go to the details, anything in red it believes is an error. Anything that's yellow, it's not sure about, it's flagged it for you to have a look. But it also shows you features, structural elements, I'll get to that. If you try Wave, here's a top tip for you. First thing you do is go to details, untick everything else until you're ready to look at it and go through one at a time. Because then your page doesn't look like somebody's graffitied it. You just get, oh yeah, there's a red ARIA thing there, that's a broken ARIA reference. So then you go down, we've only got one error, that's cool, so we found it. Sometimes on certain web pages, when I first started using Wave, it confused the heck out of me until I learned the trick to turn all the things off. But yeah, you can sort of work your way through it. Now what it also does, it has a built-in contrast tool. Other contrast tools are available. There's a lot of free ones out there. I use Wave a lot. It's sort of one of my preferred ones. Lighthouse is okay. It does it in a slightly different way, and it looks at certain things that Wave doesn't. So if anybody asks me to audit a website, I'll look at it with both tools, and I'll do an exploratory testing session running through, thinking about user journeys from different points of view. But the one thing I like about this is it tells you what the contrast ratio is, gives you sort of a sample of the text, and then tells you whether it passes AA and AAA. AAA is slightly higher contrast. But if you've got something that's failing contrast, you can actually play with these sliders and you can change it and move stuff around, and then you can find out that, oh, that's pretty cool. No matter what I do with this, it seems to work. And if you drag it around too much, you lose your text. So you can't actually see what you do. It's a little bug, it's been reported. It's a free tool, they do it all voluntary, it's a charity, so you can't play on too much. Go on, I'll show this all a bit. It's funny. Anybody heard of Ling's Cars? Voted the goriest website in the world. This is Ling. He hires cars, he also hires big military trucks and stuff like that, you name it. You go down far enough. If you go to the main website, there's little games on there. It's an absolute mess. It's a nightmare for accessibility. Or it was when it first came out. One error. Look at that and you think it's got to be a nightmare, hasn't it? They have done quite a lot of work to improve it. Not the contrast. The contrast, it's all on brand. So you can't change the brand. No, because we branded it. Yeah, right, okay. So you can see here that the text in the little box here is very pale, so it's failed. But if I move it along this line, you can see I don't have to go too far from where it was, so it starts passing. And all we've done is made it darker, essentially. So there's ways and means with contrast, and generally they're quite easy. When we were doing this white label stuff, we had like six different clients sign on to use it to start with. So we made a content manager to change all the colours and stuff like that. One of them was like proper horrendous. Like you literally could barely read anything. It was like a presentation I was at. Yesterday I drove 4 hours down past Luton for an all-day summer conference and then drove 4 hours back up. And we had a talk from something like the Inclusion Institute of Management or something like that. And literally every page of the presentation had accessibility issues. And we went, so are we including it? Now I'm sure that looked good on a laptop. One of the projects I'm working on is like a set of how-to guidelines to make presentations accessible. And one of the things that's going to be in that is, no matter how good it looks on a laptop, if you get it on a big screen and there's a strip light in front of it, like the Yoli contrast is going to wash out. This was in like a cinema-sized room was the presentation, and they didn't turn the lights out when she was doing the presentation. Now, I had this at Atelier in Leeds, so my presentation was going really well, and then I put my periodic table, I tested it up, and they went, can't see it. I went, it's right there, what do you mean can't see it? And it was because there was a strip light above it, so I had to quickly find where the lights from the room were and turn the strip light off. And as soon as I did that, it was perfect. But I learned a valuable lesson there, and that lesson was, when I do presentations, all my backgrounds are black and all my text is white. And that works in like 90% of situations, no matter what side of the screen you're on, whether you're on the TV, whether you projector, stuff like that. So doing it the other way around makes life a lot easier. Always have two versions, because if anybody asks you to print anything off and you have a black background, you're going to go through them all, and then your page is going to do that when it comes out the printer when you've got out. Anyway, again, I'm going to have to do so. So that's contrast. Contrast is generally quite easy to fix. Usually you can usually move 2 or 3 shades one way and 2 or 3 shades the other way, or that way, and make it better. So like this brand thing, I actually fixed some of the thing in, and I printed it back to them. I said, oh, we tweaked something in the background to see if that would help, and they didn't notice. I moved their branding colours 3 shades one way, 3 shades the other way, and they went, oh yeah, it looks really good now. I told you our branding would work. I wouldn't. So heading levels is the next one. So for heading levels, I'm going to go to the British Computer Society, and I'm going to put my wave on. 12 errors. See, missing alternative text. Is it missing or is it dead? So let me turn that off because I'm not interested in these first one. I'm going to go just down to structural elements. Now, every good page should only have one heading level 1. I was on the site last week, it had 17 heading levels. I couldn't tell you why, but it did. And it was a nightmare with the keyboard, and it was a nightmare for a screen reader. Now, screen reader users scan a page quite often, especially if it's a page they're not familiar with. Screen readers allow you to do several things, which is you can list all the links on the page, so you can see what information and where am I going to go with it. Which is why you don't use click here, because you've got 27 links on your page, and I'll say click here, and the screen reader user lists the links. Hearing click here 27 times is a bit demoralising. If your sentence describes where you're going to go, let the sentence the link. Doesn't change what you do, you just add in the link, but it makes it more descriptive. Others go through heading levels and get read out what the different heading levels are. Heading level 1 should be basically what your page is called. And then heading level 2s should have heading level 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s under them, and then your next section should be another heading level 2, and it's common sense really. But as you can see here, you've got that as a heading level 3. I'm not sure whether it's embedded under there or they've just decided to call them 3s. But yeah, you can argue it. But it's interesting looking at different pages. If you look at the BBC, right into structural elements, you can see they've got heading level 1 and lots of 2s. And the low and unordered list of the BBC, it seems to be written into the way they make web pages. Not wrong with an unordered list, if you use it in the right way and they tend to do it. But yeah, that just gives you a flavour of the page and how it's structured, and makes it easier to, that's literally an accessibility test. Has it got good structure? I can look at that and I can have a decision in minutes. The next one I'm going to do is I'm thinking about joining the BCS. I've clicked on the thing that says give me 20 quid or whatever it was, and it's taken me through to this page. And the reason I've brought you through to this page is I want to talk about something that sounds really, really complicated and is really, really easy, and that's sensory characteristics. That's what it says in the web content accessibility guidelines. You need to consider sensory characteristics. And basically what that means is, if you're giving information, don't do it with one sense. What I mean by that is, if there's an error, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to register. I haven't filled anything in. So it's saying, please fill in this field, and it's got a little icon. Sometimes you see a red box around them, and a red box round isn't really good if somebody's got colour vision deficiency and they can't tell the difference between red, green and grey. Because red, green and grey all look grey. So they won't tell it's changed. If you put in a border around something as alert, make it bigger so it stands out. And then give something else. So you've put a box around it and you've put an error message underneath it. Or you've put an X if something's wrong. I looked at the system. Sorry, you got a question?
Sometimes you get a text box where it's got in the text box an example of format. You should enter the data, and as soon as you go into the box, it disappears.
Yeah,
which is really annoying.
Yeah, placeholders have their place. As long as it's read out by a screen reader, you've got a chance to capture that information before you start doing anything. But I've seen them disappear when you tab on the field rather than you put focus on it and it disappears and doesn't get announced to the screen reader what was there, and it's like it was so what about that user journey and giving an example and stuff like that.
If you're on the TV license site, if you tab from there, it goes to the word's last name, the text last name, rather than the box, the text box.
Yeah, so having labels as tab elements is a bit weird. I don't know why you want to do that, but sometimes I've seen sites that don't have tab elements that they're supposed to have, or they've got keyboard traps. So you tab into something, you can't get back out of it no matter what you do. It happens a lot with pop-ups, or pop-overs. Like you get a pop-over, it's not got keyboard focus, so you can never get to it. And if you can't see, you don't know it's there. So yeah, giving things that pop up keyboard focus and the way of closing it, cancelling it, and stuff like that. That's pretty good. But yeah, sensory characteristics is basically make sure there's more than one way that you're feeding information back to it. Like I said, whether it's red and an X, or whether it's a highlight and please fill in this, they both work. So the last one I'm going to do is zoom to 200%. I've got 7 minutes left, so I'm feeling pretty cocky with myself. We really start 5 minutes late, so I can't have something. So zoom to 200% is basically you zoom in to 200%. Does what it says on the tin. Now, if you've got good mobile first responsive design, when you zoom in, you can still see everything. It moves around. I might be better actually on the main heading page. Yeah, so you can see there's lots of things. That's been rearranged. If I go that down, you can see there's 4 things in a row there. So basically what I'm doing is I'm doing control plus and control minus. It's if you've got a wheel mouse, it's quicker with a wheel mouse. Or you can click on the little zoom thing up there. So there's multiple ways of doing it. But yeah, there is one that says zoom to 400%. And if you've got good responsive design, no matter how much you zoom to maximum, and it'll still work. But zoom to 200% is your basic one on the thing. Everything should be reachable, everything should be seeable, and it shouldn't fundamentally change how you interact with the website. Now on the British Computer Society, if I hold control and hit plus, oh, I've got two scroll bars now. I've got horizontal and vertical. That's a naughty. So that would fail that test. There's easy ways of doing it, but if you've got a website that's been the same website for quite a long time, it's a heck of a refactor, and you're probably better off creating a new page to replace it, putting all your content on it, and then bidding it over. But yeah, like I said, I like to play with things. But basically, it's doing that because it's got static settings. It's not responsive at all. So I've gone through. Skip to main link. That's getting people past top or side menus to get to the main content of the page. If you've got a website like the BBC, which has got thousands of pages, imagine having to tab through that menu every time you want to read something. Bit of news, very annoying. Keyboard navigation and visible focus, they go hand in hand. Just letting people know where they are on the page and making sure they can do that journey with the keyboard. Keyboard is the foundation of accessibility, and the reason I say that is because a lot of things hang off it. Every input device, it doesn't matter if it's a blow tube, it doesn't matter if it's a braille switch or a braille keyboard, all these things use keyboard navigation. Like a switch is basically you can go back and forth and enter, that's all it is. It's just three things. And right is a tab, left is a tab back, enter is to interact with something. That's all it is. But it's basically just using that keyboard functionality of tab and enter. Alternative text, make sure you've got a good reason for adding it. Contrast, if you've got bad contrast on the site, good contrast isn't that far away usually, unless you've got linked cars and you're just doing it to be nice. Oh, it's video, I shouldn't use naughty words. Heading levels, as I say, make sure there's one heading level 1, not 17. It's weird, and you should be made to stand in a corner for a while. I tried navigating that with the keyboard and it was messed up, and I kept getting stuck and I kept getting trapped. And the only way, if you can only use a keyboard, is to force refresh it, because you're completely stuck. You need to navigate away from it and force refresh it. So don't be that person. Sensory characteristics, more than one way of feedback, it's dead simple. And zoom to 200%, don't fix widths. Do good responsive design. Mobile first design is the way to go, because it doesn't matter how narrow your browser goes or how wide your browser goes. That's another way of checking responsive design, is just make your browser as narrow. You can then also see where your breakpoints are and see if they make sense. First time we did mobile first responsive design, and our first attempt at breakpoints, we ended up with a load of, like you can see at the side here, you've got all this space. We ended up with a load of that on one side of the page at a breakpoint, and then the next breakpoint, it jumped to the other side. So the actual main bit of the website was doing this. It looked weird and fun, but it was interesting fixing it. We had some good fun learning. So like I said, none of the developers have ever done any web development. We just got picked out of different teams and put together. So it was really fun learning along the way. So that's pretty much me. If anybody says, well, why do we need to think about accessibility? Oh, there's a Grim Reaper there, or is that block from screen? Yeah, could be that long white face one. There are 1.2 billion people on the planet with a disability, and it's the only demographic in the world that every one of us in this room can join like that. Whether that's through a virus, through an infection, through an accident, every one of us. And when you get to my age, I've just had my 57th birthday, the older you get, the more chance of joining it, because of age and stuff. I didn't always wear glasses, but I do now. These are varifocals. because I can't read or see things from a distance. So, I always wondered why frisbees seem to get bigger when they get closer to you when they hit me. No, I thought that was a joke. Went down like a lead balloon or a frisbee that should bounce off your head, I suppose. So yeah, I've got to really push it. So there's a website called We the 15. It's promoting disability. WebAIM, Web Accessibility Mind. That's where you can get your NVDA. That's where you can look at Wave. Wave is also an online tool as well as an extension. You can go to a web page and put a website into it and it'll evaluate it. There are loads of information out there on my website. It does it by year. I've got book reviews on there. I wrote an article called Why We Should All Be Embarrassed by the WebAIM Million Report. The WebAIM Million Report has been going on for years. And when it started, it found of the top 1,000,000 home pages on the web, as ranked by Google and whatever, 98.7% of it had an accessibility issue. We've made leaps and bounds over the last decade. It's now 96.8. It's shit. Sorry for the video. We should be doing better. There's no reason there's that many. An average page has 60 accessibility issues. That's home pages. And some of that's because some of them met these never-ending scroll pages, but it's another thing. So, that's all the links to simple tests for accessibility every tester should know. There's information and stuff like that on there. I haven't got time to do it now, but I used to do a monthly newsletter, Ali with Ady. It's got links to all sorts of different stuff. There are poems and songs on there. Like I rewrote The French Prince to Bel Air. In West Yorkshire, born and raised. Executing tests was how I spent most of my days. Because the test manager, who was up to no good, basically came in and his way of improving things was to measure all the developers by how many bugs the testers found. But then he measured the testers by how many bugs they found. So everything he could have handled. On here somewhere is WCAG 2.1, all the guidelines with test hints. I'll give you a clue, manual inspection is mentioned a lot, but where you can use the tool and things like that have. Is it, no, it wasn't 2018, I thought it was 2019, maybe 2020. Somewhere in here is a review of Nordic testing days. I did a one-day workshop about the basics of accessibility and accessibility testing, and I put together a attendee pack, which is basically a folder on my Google Drive, and it has a ton of links and resources to do with accessibility. I've made it publicly available. It's on there. I'll probably tweet it out and add it to my LinkedIn at some point tonight or tomorrow. So if anybody comes and looks on my page, you will find a link to it. Save it as a favourite. It's like publicly accessible. You can download and save all the stuff on there or just use it as a resource. Like I say, everything I've learned about accessibility is pretty much in the public domain in some way or form. And then, if you want to be an accessibility advocate, you can read all about that too. So that's me. So thank you very much for your attentive listening. Didn't like not laughing at the joke, that'll let you all off. And that's me done. Question time.
Do you want to just show everybody how to get to Lighthouse since you're in Chrome at the moment?
You can expect to get there, can't you? I don't use it for it because
It's in DevTools.
I don't test anymore. So if you right click and inspect and go into DevTools and then go on to the right hand side, I've got Art Toolkit as well, which is another similar thing. But Lighthouse generates a little report, and you can do it on mobile or desktop. You do navigation by default. You can tell the things I work on, can't you? If I do accessibility on the big test period, it'll generate a report and tell you stuff about it, a bit like Wave does. But it depends if you're on dodgy guest Wi-Fi or not. It doesn't do too bad. So you can see it's got names and labels, it groups it in different ways, but it tells you how many's passed, how many don't really apply to the page, and then stuff to check. So again, it's like the warnings in Wave. So it's a very similar thing. There are other stuff at Toolkit and what have you. Well, that's not really part of the demo. But yeah, I just encourage you to go play with accessibility. I started off, I used to basically have sessions where I only used the keyboard. That developed into Accessibility Wednesdays. So I put my mouse in the drawer and went on a Tuesday night. I didn't come out till Thursday morning. I did everything with the keyboard and I had a headphone with screen readers on. If you have a go with the screen reader, I'd recommend not doing it for more than about 10 minutes the first time. I kept getting headaches. It took me a while. And it was just getting used to what you were telling me, because I was struggling to understand and it was kept talking to me and stuff like that. But it doesn't take that long to get over it. It took me about 2 weeks, and going back and just having 10-minute sessions when I started getting comfortable with it. Yes, there was a question?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on those overlays that some websites have that sometimes change the contrast by a flick of a button or change the font? You've seen them as well, I'm sure.
Right. So I'm trying not to swear.
That's okay, please go ahead.
But there is a website that explains exactly why overlays, like, well, I can't name them because Andrew Roselli, who is a proper expert in accessibility, did an article saying why this company will get you sued, and they're basically suing him for it. And there's a big thing going on in court, so we can't really talk about it. But they don't work. They can help with some things, but they break other things. Quite often, overlays are not keyboard accessible. So if you can't navigate around the overlay that's trying to fix accessibility because it's not keyboard accessible, it cocks it up. In America, there are many examples of companies with these overlays who got told, oh, put one line of code in at the top of your code base, and we'll fix all your accessibility and pass the WCAG 2.1. There are hundreds of examples of companies getting sued and paying out because they've used an overlay and it's been proved to not be accessible or not improve accessibility, and you've still got problems. So yeah, these companies have sort of come out of nowhere, and it sounds lovely, automate all your accessibility problems away with one line of code. It sounds like snake oil, it sounds like it's too good to be true, because it is. Now that doesn't mean you can't have elements built into a page. I've seen like the BBC has a little sub-menu for accessibility where you can change to high contrast, and you can choose 4 different levels of contrast. You can make text bigger automatically rather than having to zoom. All these are good if they're done in the right way, but an overlay that had something over the top of the site that sometimes you can't reach with a keyboard, it ain't really that good for accessibility. But yeah, I'll try and find the page. But yeah, if you sort of Google overlay objectors or something like that, I'll try and find it. But basically, there's over, I think at last count, 700 accessibility or people working in accessibility, including myself, who signed it. We shouldn't use overlays, and endorsed the information about it. Any more questions? Yes.
What about mobile apps? How do you test them?
So, as I said, there are mobile tools you can run against to get you started.
Can you name any of them? Because how do I find them?
If you
Yes,
if you search in the App Store for accessibility, there's 3 or 4 tools. So there's more paid for than there is free. Off the top of my head, I'd have to go looking it out. I haven't done any proper mobile accessibility testing for about 4 years. So all that front of brain knowledge of I need to use that, I need to use this, that was like 2 phones away as well. So I look at my phone to see what I've got installed. But there are tools that will help you. But the best way to assess accessibility is put it in screen reader mode and learn finger gestures, navigate through your page. Is it following a sensible user journey? If you're using mobile first design and you design on your desktop and your mobile, it's very similar. And it's basically your desktop narrowed and put in a frame so you can download it. It should follow the same navigational thing. Quite often it doesn't, and you get some strange and interesting things going on. But yeah, there's all sorts of gestures. Get to the end of the page by doing a J-hook. Get to the top of the page from the bottom by doing a reverse J-hook. 4-finger taps do different things. You can turn vibrations on. So if you check your phone, it does. There's all sorts of ways of interacting with it. But the best way to check an app is actually physically turn the screen reader on a phone and play with it and see what sort of information. Are you getting all the information back you need? Is it telling you what you need? Is it following the sensible user journey? Yeah, there's a lot of apps because of the nature of the things they do, like games and stuff like that. You're never going to make them accessible. Basically because the foundation would need to be rewritten. So I play a game where you go tap things and you build buildings and stuff like that. I know like there's no way it can be accessible. I've tried it with screen reader just to see what happens. It's just a mess. But I like it. So. Any more? Yes.
You mentioned the screen reader, but have you ever had a chance to see people using a braille reader?
Yes. It's, and again, if you see someone interacting with the braille reader, where the braille reader is going at 400 words a minute, it's basically their life. They say if you do something for 30 minutes every day for 90 days or something like that, you're going to get reasonably good at it. Well, if your life is interacting with the internet through a braille reader, so I don't know if anybody's familiar with the assistive technologies. A braille reader is basically, when you read braille, you run your finger over it. This is an electronic device that basically scrolls while you hold your finger still. But fascinating. I've had interactions and workshops with some very, very special people who have superhuman skills when it comes to how fast they can hear screen readers, how fast they can gather information through the fingertips. Yeah, just some phenomenal people. If you get the chance, get your product VPAD, which is a voluntary product accessibility template, and that will basically get a company who've got native screen reader users, keyboard users. They will go through your website and they will tell you where you are in terms of accessibility. They will give you some guidance on how to fix it and stuff like that. There's some good ones out. There's some really good ones out there. Quite often they're not-for-profits or charities, but it can be quite pricey. Like a website, an admin website, and a mobile app. They weren't that big or huge. That was about 80k. But as a first investment on improving the accessibility journey, it's money well spent. Is that right? That was your question. Any more? Cool. Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Seems like you're done. Say